Welcome to another Minecraft video. Today I'm here to talk about the second prototype of my new furnace array. I actually prepared this a while ago, but I got a bit sick and couldn't record for a while, so I would have liked to get this out sooner, but it sadly is what it is sometimes. So anyways, we are here to talk about the prototype. It's going to be an improvement on the first one in two major ways. First up, reliability. The first one was kind of a nightmare to work with in some cases, and yeah, I wanted to make it so that ideally I won't ever have to call into the system and push a minecart along in order to get it going again. It shouldn't get stuck to begin with, and there are a few things that I try to improve on this, but just know that I'm not too familiar with minecarts in this game. I try to avoid them because I knew they can be incredibly unreliable and I just didn't want to ever deal with it. But yeah, I'm not fully aware of all the little quirks of them. I'm just trying my best to avoid the major issues. But there may be some others that I'm still going to run into. We'll have to see about that. But yeah, right now reliability is a bit better than before, partially because on my old system, I was running that track that's now going off into the distance in the other direction, right on the side to this one. And I didn't know that minecarts running side by side would still be affecting one another. It was quite unexpected. I knew it used to be the case, but I thought that was a thing of the past. But yeah, as it still happens, I just put one track into the other direction so that this doesn't happen anymore. Also, in terms of reliability, I tried to account for a few edge cases here and there. We'll talk about them a bit later down the line, but there are a few things that I tried to consider now that may have not worked out with the first prototype, if I tested for them. And yeah, the second major goal here was just implementing a functional and up-to-speed item recollection system. So this is the system that gets the items out of the furnaces and into the output chest over here. So yeah, the input is this one right here, the output is up on top. And it's running a lot faster than the simple hopper line that I had before. That one was really only there because I couldn't be asked to pay too much attention to that system at that point. I wanted to develop other parts first, and this thing now it's keeping up with the furnaces, which is everything that I needed to do. Beforehand, immediately after getting some items smelted, the hoppers would clog up because they cannot keep up with the speed of production. Meaning that if I smelt twice the amount of items, the time it takes for everything to be put back into the output chest would maybe be somewhere between 3 or 4 times as long. Something like that. And I mean, ideally, twice the amount of items should take twice the amount of time, but no more than that. And I'm pretty close to that right now, so I'm really happy about it. There's a pretty consistent time between the last item leaving the chest over here before it comes back up right here. There's always going to be some delay in the system because it needs to go into the minecart, it needs to be put into the furnace, takes the 10 seconds to smelt, takes some time to be picked up again and put into the chest, but it's not a time that increases with the amount of items. And that's very important for me. Overall processing is going to take longer, but it's not going to have half the system wait because it's just clogged up somewhere. The bottleneck is now with the furnaces, and that's where it should be. And yeah, we'll get into the whole speed thing in a moment as well. It's going to be a whole thing about making this even faster than it is. Not that I think that it necessarily needs to be faster, but there are still a few things that I could tweak. So, those were the two major improvements. Let's now quickly talk about some other things I would like to mention in order to make it easier to understand what's really happening in here. First up, the entire system. I could split it down the middle over here delete one side of it, and the other one would still be working perfectly fine. These are basically two completely independent systems apart from sharing an input and output chest. If each of them was made more like this with two individual chests or barrels or whatever, they would be not interacting with each other anymore. But I want to process an entire double chest here, so we are going to keep them together for now. Just note that maybe in future prototypes I might not be going for both sides anymore due to other reasons. I'm trying to move away from the double chest system because it's also a bit limiting on how much I can process at a time. And trying to keep this one filled up while the minecarts are sucking out the items is a job on its own. And my idea is to eventually move over to shulker loading and unloading systems. And also I prepared a prototype for my kelp farm, maybe a bit larger than I need it to be, but this thing is also working. Just note that we are going to take a look at all of this in a separate video that's going to be a follow-up. Today is going to be more about the prototype itself and not additional systems that might come later down the line. But yeah, this basically being two furnace arrays side by side also means that up on top we can ignore half of the mess and only take care of everything on this side. I'll likely talk more about the principle behind it than really what every single component is doing, because it's just checking a few things, putting out a signal at the right condition, and then putting everything forward by a bit. The last thing I need to mention before we finally fire this entire thing up is that the way I'm running the minecarts, I have 4 main tracks, 2 on each side. So 2 tracks are there for distributing the items into the furnaces, 2 tracks down below to get the items back out and put into the output chest. And every single track has multiple minecarts on them. So for the input I have 2 minecarts, one up there, one down here. And for the recollection system I have 5. And they are not all going to be on the track at the same time. It's always only going to be one. The rest will be stuck in the system and waiting for that one minecart to come back before deploying the next one. That is all to hopefully increase reliability and not run into problems where one minecart bumps into the other and everything is a whole mess. Also, the tracks are basically, they all end in a solid block, meaning that the minecart will bounce off and run back on the same track. So if I let go of another minecart before the first one comes back, it's not going to work out. So yeah, most of the minecarts will be standing around and waiting for their time to shine, and yeah, that's how the entire thing is hopefully going to stay working for longer than if I had multiple ones sent out consecutively. Anyways, let's get started. So right now I'm distributing the items into the double chest for the input, but only once I let go of these it's actually going to do anything. Right now they are technically not in the chest, but yeah, I let go of it in 3, 2, 1, now. And you can see the stacks are being sucked out pretty quickly. This is double minecart sucking speed, so this is quite a lot. Next set of minecarts comes in, getting loaded already, which is why I have multiple minecarts per system here. I need one minecart to always be loading while the other one is out and distributing the stuff, just so that the handover is going as quickly as possible. Just like that. And kind of the same thing is happening up on top, but, well, down below I can actually make use of the hopper minecart speed, which is why everything is running so quickly here. Up on top, the thing that determines the speed is actually the hopper down below the minecart. So, yeah, it's going to take a while until it has all the items out. And that's why I'm using multiple stations. Basically 5 stations per side. First one is only there to wait for the incoming minecart. check that it's there, and then advance everything else by a step. So the minecart is going from the first into the second system, and then once the next one comes in, this minecart will go from the second to the third, then to the fourth, and then to the final one. The system doesn't really care what any minecart is doing from the second to the fourth part over here. It's only ever checking if there's anything incoming on the first one, and also whether the last one is empty. So if I still have any items in here, it's going to detect that there are items flowing through the hopper. As it is right now, it's still ramping up, so this might also be empty. But yeah, in a bit there are going to be some full minecarts coming through here. It's just gonna take a few rounds. But yeah, now we have another minecart over here, which is still somewhat loaded, and the last few items are actually going to be pulled out by the last system. But by the time the next minecart comes in, then this is always going to be empty, so it has the maximum capacity for getting items back in here. So yeah, that's all working as it should. And it's actually running a bit faster than the processing speed of the entire furnace array, so this is not the bottleneck. And if we look at the output chest down here, we can see that this is actually running very quickly. This can fill in the stuff at, I think, 20 items per second maximum, or what was it? 8 times hopper speed. So hopper speed is 2.5 items per second. We have 2 hoppers in front of the chest, 2 behind, 2 on the sides, and also 2 on top. So that's how we get this really nice and high speed going. Sometimes it's a bit faster, sometimes it's a bit slower, but in the end it's always keeping up with what the furnace array down below does. So that's the important part here. And yeah, we might already be done with the amount of items that needs to be taken out. The minecart below here is also empty already, so it's only a matter of time until everything is full again. So it's going to slow down a bit for the last few items, as there are only going to be a few more minecarts to unload. But for the majority of time, this should be running at near top speed. And yeah, the system on top, while it gets activated from down below when the entire thing jumps into action, it's actually self-determining when it should be stopping. Basically, once a minecart comes into the 5th station over here, it's going to take a signal from the detector rail and one from the comparator. And if the comparator is off while there's a minecart on top, this one, for example, is still somewhat loaded. Once this doesn't pick up anything anymore and there's only a signal through the detector rail itself, this entire thing is going to turn off, and through that it's going to be then stopping sending out further minecarts. But yeah, that might still take a moment, but we should be getting decently full over here. So for a full double chest of items, this is pretty decent, I would say. We can even wait for the last few items. It's going pretty quickly right now. I think we are seeing the start of it slowing down, but it's still coming in with 2 or 3 items every time. Now this seems to be double item speed from what I can tell. And the last few items are likely going to be a single hopper speed, I mean. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Last few items. And we are done. So yeah, that's all that it processed over here. Going pretty quickly. Working out pretty well, but once again, one of my focuses in the future will be trying to improve on the input system so that I'm not limited to a single double chest over here. And yeah, now the entire system has turned off and it's just waiting for more items to be put in and processed. So let's start talking about the speeds over here. I already mentioned it on top. We can process up to 20 items per second. But from now on, I actually would like to talk about only one half of the system. So for one half, it's actually only half the speed as you would expect. So we are looking at a maximum of 10 items per second, or 4 times hopper speed. Down below with the minecart taking the items out of the chest, that's actually twice the speed, so that's 20 items per second. But the real bottleneck is to do with the furnaces and the minecart speed on the track itself. The maximum speed that we can reach with a single furnace array is going to be ideally 8 items per second. Because the minecart can travel by 8 blocks per second and the furnaces are able to pull out 1 item of the minecart each time it goes over. It just has enough time to do exactly that. No more, no more, no less. And of course, since I'm running the minecart back on the same track, that means it's going to take 1 item out of it on the way to the end, and then another one on the way back to the starting point. So yeah, at the end, the maximum length that I could possibly have here would be 80 furnaces. Because in the end, every furnace needs 10 seconds to smelt 1 single item. We can deposit 8 items per second. So the 8 times the 10 seconds it takes, that's 80 furnaces, and that's what I have here. To be clear, I should have a few less. Because this only really applies for the time the minecart spends on top of one of these hoppers. The starting area is going to be not on top of that, it's actually over here, as you can see. I'm trying to get it onto the hopper as soon as possible. But yeah, there's a bit of inefficiency over here for the time that the minecarts take from getting over here to the first hopper. And also basically on the rear end, I'm running it inefficiently as well. I could make the last thing a hopper as well, but the problem is, with how it bounces back, the minecart is only ever going to deposit 1 item at a turn compared to every single other hopper getting 2 per minecart. So yeah, the turnaround doesn't really work too well, so there is a bit of a problem with that, and therefore I decided to just have 1 piece of track on just a block instead of a hopper. So there is potentially a bit of inefficiency over here, and therefore maybe the entire thing should be shorter by 2 or 3 furnaces, because otherwise there's going to be a little gap in each of the furnaces between the items arriving, and that's not really ideal. I'm basically wasting fuel here, but it's not too much of an issue. The thing is, I'm wasting fuel, and the thing doesn't really run any faster from having any more additional furnaces over here. It's really kept at that 8 meters per second speed of the minecarts, including any inefficiency. And I tried to optimize this a little bit, both by having the distance between the minecart loading station and the first hopper as short as possible. Maybe I could find a way to even cut out this part over here. I'm not entirely sure, but the other important thing is, once another minecart comes back, it immediately goes over the detector rail, and that means it's immediately going to send out the next one in line. So that's not going to take much more time either, but there's another bit of inefficiency through the delay right here, so yeah, it's not perfect. And I could fine tune this, I could take out a few furnaces in the end, maybe just moving the last block to stop the minecart a bit over. and also taking out a few of the hoppers, and that would do it. But we'll have to see about it. I'm not really too concerned about that right now. I tried making everything a bit faster and I'm kinda happy with where it is. But for the final prototype there's a bit more trimming to be done. Just wanted to point that out. But yeah, so we end up with 10 items per second on the top, 8 items per second through the furnace array, meaning that of course, yeah, the top is always going to keep up with how many items are being processed down here, because it's running ever so slightly quicker. The thing is, the input can do twice that much. 20 items per second here, but I would need to change quite a lot of things in order to really get an effect from that. And I think that would make the stuff just too complicated and also potentially prone to failure. Right now I'm kind of doubling up my speed by having the entire furnace array copied over to this side as well. So that's working quite well. It's all independent of each other, and it's two systems which I think are reliable, just being stacked side by side, so there's no real problem with that. If I was to change this up to work differently, we would be looking at a much more complicated system, even for this part right here. I made a little mock-up over here what would need to happen in order to make it work, and it's not all that amazing. So basically, instead of having 2 minecarts down here, we would need 3, then double up the smelter array, and that would give us a maximum output of 16 items per second. So that's at least a bit closer to the 20 that the minecart pulling the items out can do. So let me quickly walk you through the entire thing. This is the loading station. There's going to be a single one for both sides here. And once the first minecart is loaded, it's getting sent out. Now after this point, we would have multiple switches in here. And now we would actually be going to the other side. So now another minecart would need to come down. I think it would need to be this one. Loading up at the chest over here as well, and after a timer runs out, it would need to be sent out onto its track. So in the meantime, this minecart is actually just running up and down the track over here. It's just on its way right now. So switch would need to be flipped, another minecart would come in and get loaded, and at some point this minecart would be coming back. So this is now done unloading all the items, coming back into the system, and at that point this would need to be sent out again. Then this would be going into the loading station, another switch be flipped. No, this one not yet. And now it's waiting for the return of the other minecart, and it would be doing this entire thing from this point on. I can simplify part of this to make it run a bit smoother, but ultimately there's going to be one big difference here which I'm not comfortable with right now. On this array, ultimately the departure of the next minecart will always be triggered by another minecart coming back, and there's no other minecart out there on the same track to possibly collide with it and cause any issues. While with this one, partially it has to be done through timing. Once 2 minecarts are out, I can switch over to waiting for one of them to return, but I always have to be sure that the next one is going to be on the same track and not a different one, so it's just... there's a lot of stuff going on here. And that timing can cause issues if, for some reason, one of the areas here is unloaded. And it might end up sending out another minecart into this part later down the line. So I'm not really sure how to prevent that right now, and therefore I'm not really comfortable with trying out the entire system at scale. I tried making this run a bit smoother, and it can actually work, especially once you get rid of the switches in the track and replace them with other more efficient ways. but I'm not entirely sure if this would really be the improvement I'm looking for. So basically this is the loading station, and this is the splitter that decides where the minecart goes, and once the other minecarts come back, they just run on the track and there's no real switch happening right now. So I can send this thing out. It's also going to automatically switch over the block here, meaning that the next minecart can only go down this line. And yeah, once the next minecart comes back, it would be going straight into storage. This one can get going, and this one would be flipping back. So this thing is running smoother, but ultimately, if I want to make this a thing, I would need to make sure that this whole flipping action happens when one of the minecarts comes back. I cannot have it happen just because the minecart goes out, because once again, maybe this one is having a problem, and at that point, I mean, I can show you. This now gets into storage. This one gets going. Now it flips over automatically, and if I just let this one out, we have two on the same track, collision, and something weird would likely be happening. So this is not really ideal, and I would have to invest a bit more time. I was thinking about talking about this later, but since I already picked up the entire thing here, I thought it would be more fitting to talk a bit about it now. Otherwise I would need to reintroduce the entire topic in the next video again. But yeah, just only having one furnace array per loading station, much easier, much better, even if I could potentially run it at twice the speed if I added another one into the mix. By the way, the item recollection system would not be much easier from that. It would also need to be doubled up. Because yeah, every single furnace array is going to run at 8 items per second, and doubling up to 16 items, this thing couldn't keep up anymore. So that's the whole problem. But yeah, that's all the stuff that speaks against trying something like this. There could still be something good about it, but I'll just have to maybe try in the future. Who knows if I get around to that. The other thing I wanted to talk about are a few of the edge cases over here. Because when I start loading multiple types of items, let me show you what happens with this kind of stuff to begin with. We are just going to turn this on again. And one big thing I changed is that to begin with, there's going to be a timer over here. So this is just a fading comparator clock. And it starts fading as soon as one single item enters the minecart, because it can easily be the case that maybe I have 2 types of items in here, and then there wouldn't be full stacks all the time. So if I check that there's items up on top, I cannot really be sure that the minecarts are ever going to fully fill up. And we are going to see a big part of the problem once the next minecart comes back. Let me just wait for that for a moment. Because this thing is actually not going to be fully empty. There's still 2.5 stacks in here. And if I was now filling in maybe sand to produce some glass, these of course wouldn't be stacking up, and they will stick around until the very end of the process. It's just how much is going to be in the minecart from that point on. So that's not ideal. So I gotta be careful about that part and make sure that I'm not overloading the entire thing at all. Or more like that I'm not underloading and relying on the thing to be full before sent out. Which is why I'm handling this through a timer. And after the first set of minecarts gets going, it's going to wait until the other minecart that's already out comes back anyways. So this thing does nothing from the second minecart onwards. It also activates the system on top through the little 1-bit flip-flop save cell over here. So that's what's telling the thing on top to stay on and keep going until it turns itself off again. But yeah, this system allows me to bypass any problems through partial loads, and I also put in the other thing that I was talking about with the first video, where I had the problem that potentially a minecart over here can be empty already, but there's still some leftover items in the one down below. This comparator is now checking for that, and if there's any more items in here, it's just going to send out the minecarts once more, so it will keep going until both of them are fully empty. So yeah, that's all a bit better now. I don't know if there are any more edge cases to consider. I think I pretty much covered my bases. I went through intensive testing here to make sure that there aren't any additional problems. So I think on principle we are looking pretty good right here. I had some problems with minecarts getting stuck on the edge over here when supposed to jump off the rail and ending up on that track. Since I have blue ice over here, it doesn't happen anymore, but I'm not entirely sure if it's fully fixed. Maybe I've also been just sticking around over here during the testing, just trying to look at something, and maybe I was a problem that got in the way of a minecart. We'll have to see about it. But right now it's all working as well as it should be, so I think that might be good. But yeah, I think that's everything that I can talk about right now. Oh yeah, one last thing, I just almost forgot about it. I tried simplifying the fuel system a little bit, but I didn't really end up putting the new fuel system to the existing thing right here. So if I want to refuel my furnaces, all I need to do right now is copy over the barrel which has dried kelp blocks loaded. I put them up onto this part and just break the barrel to get the items out. And instead of trying to check every single hopper over here if the stuff is in at the right amount, and we can see right here that it's kinda running a bit lower than it should be, I'm only taking care of the first one, because in the end they should be all around the same. So it's kind of a waste of redstone just trying to look into every single one of these 80 hoppers over here. Looking into one should be enough to get the full picture, and all I need to do is just keep sending out items until this one is turning off again, meaning that everything in line should be refueled by that time. So yeah, that should be really easy at the end. All that I need to add here is a bit of fuel storage, a way to have a few items dispensed, and once they come back on this track right here, they will actually fall down after crashing into the stairs. Just put them back into storage and that should be it. So yeah, there the items are. Everything that could take some kelp blocks has taken them in, and the other ones it's just going to be overflow. But yeah, for this system I didn't really bother with putting that in. It's a minor detail. Might be more for the final version. But yeah, anyways, I think that's everything regarding this system right now. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about it. It's yeah, it's working pretty nicely. I'm happy with it, but there are still a few things to work on, and I'm going to make the next video exactly about the further improvements that I could imagine. Not entirely sure if I'll continue this project, but it was definitely fun for the time being. The shulker loader unloader system is going to be quite complicated, and it will mean that I cannot put the stuff side by side anymore. So the next prototype might be looking very different if I even put it in, because I'm still having a few issues with especially the shulker loader system. But we'll look at that next time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, have a good one and bye bye.